This video will cover a couple options to do hip internal rotation, PAILs and rails. If you're not quite sure how the PAILs and rails sequence works, visit my channel and see the video that covers the basics of what PAILs and rails are. So, we're going to start with 90-90 as our base position for hip internal rotation. In 90-90, the trailing leg is the internally rotated side. So we'll move towards stretch on this leg by trying to turn toward that thigh. You'll feel the sit bone on that side traveling back toward the floor, and your chest and stomach will start turning to point toward your leg. When we're operating out of 90-90, we create stretch by manipulating the position of our pelvis since the leg is fixed on the ground. You want to feel this stretch somewhere around the outside or back of the hip. It's different for everybody. What you don't want to feel here is pinching sensations closer to your groin on this side of your hip. When you're setting up to create the stretch, there are a couple variables that you can adjust. First would be the angle of your torso. Notice I'm leaning back into my hands. You don't need to sit very upright. If I sit towards this direction and I try to sit as tall as I can, I'm starting to feel a stretch on my inner thigh here in my adductors. Now, while it's fine to feel that stretch, that is not the intention of an internal rotation PAILs and rails. So I'm going to lean back a little bit because that's a little more comfortable for me and I don't feel that stretch anymore. Another variable you can adjust is the pelvic tilt. So tucking your tailbone or lifting your tailbone will change the sensation of stretch at your hip. Most people find a slight lean back and a slight posterior pelvic tilt, so tucking your tailbone under, will help you feel this stretch in the capsule of the hip. What does it mean to feel a stretch in the capsule? Basically, you want to feel this in the deepest portions of your hip, way inside. So, once you're set up and you're ready to begin your PAILs rails, your PAILs in this position is a rotational intent. So we're trying to turn our thigh externally this way for PAILs and turn our thigh internally this way for rails. Okay? So the PAILs effort turning the thigh out will result in you pushing your foot down into the floor, but I really want you to think of this as a thigh rotation. Rails would be the opposite. We're turning our thigh internally, and that'll make our ankle or foot feel lighter on the floor. Another option for hip internal rotation, PAILs and rails, would be a modified quadruped base. All you need is something to block your ankle or lower leg. I often use my couch. For the video, I pulled up my ottoman. You could use a doorway, a bookcase, table leg, or a heavy object like a kettlebell or a dumbbell. To set up for this, get down on all fours with your target leg placed against your block. The block should be on the inside of your ankle like this. Just like in 90-90, we create our position of internal rotation by moving the pelvis rather than moving the leg. So in this setup, you're going to have to turn your hips toward the left, toward the target side, to create stretch. So here, the reason I like this base a lot is because it gives us a lot of freedom to position the pelvis in the best spot to feel the capsule stretch. So you'll have the options to tilt your pelvis one way or the other, shift your pelvis left or right, forward and backwards. Similar to 90-90, people will often feel a good capsule stretch with a touch of posterior pelvic tilt, and I also like to drift over my knee on that side a little bit. It really helps me feel that capsule stretch out here. Once you've found the stretch, PAILs has the same rotational intent as the 90-90 base. An external rotation of the thigh for PAILs, that's going to push your foot into the block, and an internal rotation of the thigh for rails, that's going to pull your foot away from the block.